All right, so let's wait a little bit and see if more people join us, and then we'll begin. But in the meantime, I can explain about what we are doing here at the Goa Jazz Academy. Um, we are we finished our last day of the sound mixing program, and tomorrow is their final assignment. So as part of their final assignment, they are mixing the sound for the Goa Jazz Academy's band as part of our bi-monthly jam sessions, where everyone's welcome and we're going to learn music as a group, and we're going to be doing a couple of things. So let's wait a little bit. All right. So welcome to volume 18 of your Sunday soundtrack from Goa Jazz Academy. And I can't believe it's been 18 volumes already, and we've had some amazing guests, talking to us about what they've been doing and making playlists for us. And this time we have someone unique and really interesting. The most interesting part is he's an instrument maker, and most importantly, he's a luthier. He's based out of Goa, and he runs a company called Bigfoot Guitars. His name is Karan Singh, and he's graciously accepted to make our Sunday soundtrack for this week. And let's get him on board. Let's wait until he joins us. Hey.
Hi, hi.
Hi. Can
Good
you hear me?
evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me? All good?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, as we spoke, you said you were in Himachal and you were traveling in the last minute. But how is it?
That's
How is it
right.
treating you? How is the weather treating you? How is the place?
It's excellent. As you can see, it's nice and a little bit chilly. I just got in late last night.
Okay,
It's
okay.
absolutely lovely, man. I haven't traveled anywhere like the rest of the country pretty much for a
Right,
long,
right,
long while. So
right.
it's good to finally be out for a couple of days.
And a good escape
I'm
from the
just here
Goan heat.
for absolutely, man. Having said that, I love the monsoons in Goa, so I
Okay,
shouldn't be complaining too much. But yeah, I've got 2, 3 days here, and then I head to Delhi for a crazy week of putting together a few electric guitars and sending them out to their new homes. So this
right.
is my two day break before that happens.
Okay. So you're back to Goa in 2 days and back to
I
business as
am,
usual.
yes, pretty soon.
Okay. Okay. So, firstly, I would like to thank you for taking, you know, making this playlist for us. This means a lot to us because usually we get our guests kind of give us the way to listen to more music and new music that is outside of our circles. So there are people sharing music every weekend with us, and we enjoy our Sundays with this soundtrack. So I'm thankful that you agreed to do it. Actually, we've had you in mind for a while, and finally you're here.
No, no,
So
it's
thank you for
absolutely,
that.
it's interesting for me. I've never done anything like this either. I don't make playlists on my own devices. So
Right.
it's been a fun project for me as well. Yeah,
Okay, that's good to
and
know.
hopefully there's some interesting tracks in there that your viewers would enjoy listening to. Let's see how that goes.
Yes, I hope so because from having listened to it myself, I love the music that you have actually put together. In fact, a lot of it was some of my personal favorites were in it too, like Eddie Vedder and Led Zeppelin, and I was so surprised to
Thank
see
you.
because every weekend our guests actually throw in these tunes that I've never heard of, and this time too, I liked your inclusion of Alan Gogol into this because I've seen a lot of his work on Instagram, but I had actually no idea he had released music. So
Oh,
this is like a
dude,
nice
you have to
gateway into
listen
that.
to the man. Yeah, he's
Right.
brilliant. He's absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, I agree. I completely enjoy his playing, and now I know that he's making some music and putting it out. So it's great for me to know that, and I can probably, and the same thing with our viewers also. I think they'll also be surprised to have to listen to Simon and Garfunkel, and especially this artist Pierre Ben Susan.
Yes,
Am I
Pierre
getting
Ben
that right?
Susan.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Ben
he's
Susan.
he's
Right,
been around for a long, long while, and
right.
he's one of the oldest fingerstyle guitarists, who paved the
Thank.
way for a lot of musicians who have now become really popular. But he's
Right.
one of the old timers who's been doing it forever, and uh, listen to the tracks. I mean, I could talk about it, but I mean,
Right, right. Of course.
he's a magician,
No,
absolutely.
this is the first time I'm hearing of this. So it's good to know that there are a lot of artists that we have not heard to, that's making rounds suddenly, so that our musical prism is also like getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's a nice thing. However, I did notice one thing, something that's really common in all the songs that you chose. All are very guitar centric, almost, and a lot of it is finger style
Surprise.
guitars. A lot of it is finger style guitar, to be specific.
That's
Is
true.
is it
So,
is it something that you like finger style playing as opposed to something else, or how?
so essentially, what I do, for those, I mean, for a lot of the people who are listening in who don't know me, I make guitars primarily, and the acoustic instruments that I make are largely catering to the fingerstyle player, right?
Right.
So by my default setting for building a guitar is keeping a fingerstyle player in mind, right?
Okay.
And when I started going down that path a few years ago, I decided that I needed to kind of, listen to more fingerstyle guitarists.
Okay.
Because I needed to hear what they're doing with the instrument in order to be able to try and make something that would be suitable for a particular style of music.
Right. Right.
So as a result of that, and talking to other luthier friends of mine, it was just, it kind of led me to guys like Alan Gogol, to Pierre Ben Susan, to Adrian Legg. I didn't put him on this list simply because the track that I really wanted to put down was not on Spotify, unfortunately. But there's a bunch of really brilliant musicians who've been doing very different things with the guitar and kind of redefining how an acoustic guitar can be used and should be used, right? So for me, it was a journey of discovery as well. And at the same time, I mean, I enjoy the music. I absolutely love listening to their stuff. And it's playing at home as well. It's not just, when I'm working, but at the same time, it's also helped me to create an instrument that I think is better suited for a fingerstyle player, right? Because I'm also paying attention to the techniques that are being used in order to do stuff. I can't play to save my life, so I have to resort to, hanging out with or watching videos of guys who actually know what they're doing with the guitar. Yeah.
Right.
I'm a three chord wonder, so my son thinks I play really well, and I don't want to bust that bubble for him.
I'm sure you do as well. Maybe sometime we can hear you play even, But did you have a hard time making this playlist? Like, I mean, I'm sure that there are, like you said, there are a lot of artists that you probably did not add. So are there any honorable mentions that you would like to actually tell our viewers so they could check them out later? And what was going through your mind while making this playlist? Like, what did you think? How did you think was the
Sure.
process of like putting things together?
Sure. So I'm going to answer that in two sections. The first one is the two honorable mentions. One just completely slipped my mind, to be honest, and that's John Gom, who's in the UK.
Right.
And he's another master of his craft. Absolutely. I love his stuff. So I would have included a track or two by him, but when I was making the playlist, it just completely slipped my mind. And the second would be Adrian Legg, who's again in the UK. There's a wonderful track by him, which I love, which is called The Netsman and the Laird, Laird. It's an instrumental track written in DADGAD tuning. He wrote it for a TV show, I think back in the 80s or early 90s. And it doesn't feature on any albums that are available on any of the streaming platforms, unfortunately, but it's on YouTube. And
Okay.
it is an absolutely phenomenal track. It's got
Right.
its ups and downs, and there's a lot happening in it. And so those two are the ones I would like to, put up as my honorable mentions. To
Right.
go to the second part of your question, what was going through my mind? I think most of this just happened spontaneously. It took me all of 20 minutes to put this playlist together because I got down to it and I just thought about what do I listen to when I'm by myself, which is when I'm in the workshop. At home, I've got two kids and three dogs, and there's not a lot of silence. And if there's any music playing, it's mostly for the kids and their entertainment. So the only time I get to listen to the music that I want to listen to is when I'm working.
Right.
So I went through my day and thought, so at different parts of the day I'll kind of queue up different music. So I like to start my day off a little bit mellow because it gives me time to it lets me think a little bit while just to help plan things out and be like, okay, this is what I need to get done. Let's get into the groove. And then as the day progresses, things may get a little bit more up tempo as I'm,
Right.
when I hit a groove and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to finish this task before lunch. Let me get this done.
Right.
So then I've got a little bit of, maybe Pearl Jam playing at that point because
Right.
that always sets me up. And then there's stuff that I've included, which are 2 or 3 songs, which are just my all-time favorites, which have just been with me for 20 years or 30 years. And
Amazing.
they would be a part of any list that I would ever make. Yeah.
Right.
And
Amazing.
anyone who knows me or has hung out with me has heard me either play those songs or sing them really badly or both. And so it was like a mix of, these 2, 3 things.
Right. Right.
That's how my playlist came about.
Yeah, and the playlist also reflects it exactly like that. It starts mellow, like you said, and then slightly goes heavier as it
Yeah.
ends. So, folks, if you want to listen to the playlist, just go to our profile, hit the link in the bio, and it's there. I like happy listening. So, coming back to your work. Now, the thing is, as a musician myself, I've always like thought about making instruments, but I don't know if I'll ever put my foot in and say, yeah, I'm going to do that. But where did this start for you? Like, how did you get into this? Because considering the country we are from and how less of luthiers are available, how
Yeah.
did you get into this? How did this prompt come about?
It's a very, very straightforward story without, trying to bore people too much. I had a lot of money and I decided that I wanted to be poor for the rest of my life. And so I decided to start making custom guitars.
Right.
Uh, all right. It was just, okay, sorry. All right. So it kind of started off just with me repairing instruments that I had, and I couldn't get them fixed locally. And I decided to, tinker around with them, got hold of this magical thing called the internet, and started researching for books and DVDs because at that point, which was about 12, 13 years ago now, YouTube didn't really have any tutorials.
Right.
YouTube was only a music channel, right? So I got hold of a lot of old school manuals and started messing around with my own instruments.
Right.
And after a little bit of experimentation, they funnily enough started playing a little bit better, more comfortably. And I had a small part-time band going with a few friends of mine, which was just like a weekend fun thing to
Right.
de-stress from the week-long corporate life that I was living at that time. And I started doing their instruments. And from there on, friends of theirs started calling, random friends of mine started calling and be like, oh, just fix this, fix that, fix this.
Right.
So it kind of organically grew from there into, all right, I can do this. Now what do I do with it? And so I started thinking about how tough can it be to actually build an instrument. And so I tried building an electric guitar. And then very quickly I realized that I had no background in woodworking. So I had to learn how to use tools, which obviously didn't strike me when this brilliant idea hit me. So it took a while. It took about 6 months or so, but there was one playable electric guitar ready by the end of it, which is
Sweet.
still around to this day. Yeah, it works.
Okay.
It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but it works.
Right. That
And
must be an amazing feeling to produce something and it's like functioning right there.
yeah, exactly. And I think that's gave me the confidence to think about it a little bit more seriously and consider doing this. And so more and more of my free time went into setting up a small workshop, which was actually usable. And as the years progressed, I decided to quit my day job and I decided to go and study guitar making seriously, because I figured if I'm going to do this as a career, then I don't want to do it in a half-hearted manner. I really wanted to give it my 100%. And so I went abroad in 2013 is when I decided to do this full time. And by then I'd already made 2 or 3 guitars, but they were okay. I mean, they were like any first couple of instruments anyone makes, nothing special, but they worked. So I went and studied in Ireland for about 3.5 months, and then got back from there. And the following year in Malaysia, I went and studied with another luthier there, got back. And from there on, it kind of started getting more serious because folks started coming to me for custom instruments. I realized that there is a need within musicians in India who have the ability to procure a high-end instrument, but not necessarily the means to do it in this country. In the sense that there are no boutique stores where you can walk in and really play high-end stuff. The highest end gear you get over here is Taylor, Martin, or in the electric field, you'll get a Gibson and a Fender. And while those are great established brands, there's a whole world of custom instruments that exists, which is, it's just different. Let me put it that way. Yeah, I won't get into a better or worse comparison because that's just purely going to be my opinion versus someone else's. It's just a completely different world.
Right.
And for folks who are clear about what they want and how they want it and the aesthetic that they like, the playability, the width of the neck, all kinds of little tweaks can be done. And that's the fun part of coming to someone like me to build a guitar for you.
Right.
Because you come to me with an idea, I work with you through it, we design it, we go through multiple conversations, share ideas, and then over a period of several months or sometimes a couple of years even, that instrument comes into fruition. And I think that's one of the key things that a luthier can offer, which you don't really get from walking into a store.
Like a branded store, and you just pick up.
Absolutely, because when you walk into a guitar shop, you play 5 guitars, and if you find one that you like, it's great. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
You find one you like, you should buy that, right? It's not, I don't have a sales pitch which says I'm better than everybody else. I do what I do, and if you like what I do, then I'm the right guy for you. If you don't like what I do, then I'm clearly not the right guy for you. You know, it's as simple as that. There is nothing else that I have to convince you of. So, and from there on, it kind of, it's just been an interesting journey. I've been fortunate enough to attend several exhibitions, guitar shows that take place in Europe, North America, China, various other places. I try and travel out once a year at least to showcase my instruments in new countries so that musicians get to see what I'm doing. I also get to meet other luthiers and connect with them because it's a close-knit community internationally. And it's a great bunch of people, very, very warm and sharing. And I get to learn from them. They get to learn from me. We hang out. We have a few beers. It's a lovely space to be in, right? It's everyone's just happy to hang out because we're mostly we're a bunch of introverts. So through the year, we are all by ourselves working in our workshop. And then, it's like, okay, for 2 days, I'm going to interact and hang and chat with a bunch of people who I've only communicated with on Facebook or Instagram or email. And so now you get to actually spend some time with the person and get to know them. So it's a mix of all these things. And I think all of that contributes to helping one grow as a builder, as an individual, all of it. It just makes life better.
Right. Thanks for sharing that. That's an interesting outlook towards things. And I don't think a lot of people know what a luthier does all day. I mean, building guitars is one thing, but how to also now that you were talking about being in Ireland. So I did read somewhere that you interned and you worked with Paul Doyle.
That's right. That was my first teacher.
Right. So what I wanted to ask you was, what do you learn? As a person who does not know much about guitar building, what do you learn? Like, where does it make a difference? Like, do you
Sure.
have
So
courses like that here in the country? Is something,
there's no, I don't know about official courses that take place. I don't think there are any in India. I know that, I teach a 3-week course where students can come and build an acoustic guitar with me under my supervision.
right?
I know a friend of mine in Bombay, Audi, also teaches occasionally. But
Okay,
what happens is with guys like us, because we're one-man shops, it's not like a 3-month program or a 6-month program because I'm building guitars through the year,
right.
right? So it's a more of function of when can I take out 3 weeks from my actual work schedule uh, to help a
To do the
student build
course,
his
yeah,
own instrument.
right,
Exactly. So it's a little bit of, because it's, see, time away from work is, it's business at the end of the day. It's
right.
more expensive for me to not be building guitars and doing something like a course or
Something else,
running
right,
workshops elsewhere, right?
right,
It's so it's a balancing game,
right,
and at some point everybody has to figure out what works for them. In
right,
the US and in Europe, there's several official luthier schools that, you know, people can go to learn the very basics of how to make guitars. Having said that, I think, I mean, it's a good place to get your basics in place, but there's no substitute for actually apprenticing with someone or spending time
right.
in the workshop of a builder who actually knows what he or she is doing. And there's
Okay,
several of them around in the world. So there's options in many, many countries. And I think it's a great way to get your hands dirty as a beginner, because you get
okay,
to see someone who's experienced working. You get to learn many new ways of doing things. You also get to learn about what not to do, which is just as
right.
important.
As important, of
And
course.
absolutely. And probably the most important part of it is you learn how to fix mistakes, as opposed to cursing yourself for a week because you've tried to build something after watching a video and you're wondering
Right.
why your product doesn't look exactly like what you built. I mean, what you've seen in the video, right? And the other thing with like the whole video learning um, options, I mean, the only
Right.
other drawback to it is that you can make a guitar-shaped object fairly easily, right?
Okay.
Making it sound beautiful is a whole different challenge. And it's
Right.
something that people can spend their whole lives working on. And it may sound cliched, a lot of builders will say this, but dude, it's really, really difficult to get to that point, right?
Right.
Once you get to that point, then it suddenly makes sense and then you can replicate it fairly easily, or at
Right.
least not easily, but with a lot less effort and stress. But
Right.
getting to that stage is going to take a hell of a lot of time. And it's not something that comes across in any video that you watch, because understanding sound, you have to be there to experience
Right.
it, right? It's
Of
like,
course.
how do I tell you how well my guitars play through a video,
Right. Of course.
right? You can hear the guitar and you'll say, oh, yeah, that sounds beautiful. Is that the guitar? Is that the player? Is that the sound system? Is it all of it?
Right.
Hopefully it's all of it. However, when you're physically sitting down and experiencing it, then you see the tactile feel of holding that instrument. What does it call out to you? Does it not? There's a
Right.
lot going on, right? And as luthiers, we're trying to focus on all these little elements and give them their due importance,
Okay.
because because it is a big deal for us, right?
I
If
mean,
someone's
it's
coming to me
also an art
for a
form at
custom
the end of the
piece,
day. Right.
it is,
Like you.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean,
You can
building
look
an
at it like
instrument
that.
is an art form. At the end of the day, it's like a painting. At the end of the day, it has to first you'll have to be happy with it, and it has to be
Yes.
presentable. In this case, it has to sound good, and and
Yeah,
all the
it has
jazz.
to check all the boxes. If it doesn't
Right.
check all the boxes, it's not a win for me, right?
Yep. Nice.
So there's a lot of aspects to it that one has to look at, right? And that's only in the construction part of it. Forget the business side of it. So
Right.
being a one-man shop, as romantic as it may seem, it's also a crash course in becoming a businessman. It's a crash course in time management. It's a crash course in working harder than you've ever worked in your life. And this is not special to building guitars. It's with anything that you
It's a
decide to
one-man
do, right?
entrepreneurship
It
thing.
is. It is.
Yeah.
That's basically what it comes down to. But can be done, of course. And is it fun? Yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself doing it. It's been
Amazing.
several years now, and I love it. Yeah. I
Amazing,
love going to my
amazing,
workshop. I love spending time by myself, and I love working with wood. So
amazing.
it's great. Yeah. And
So
it's
now, huh,
it's also it's a blessing to have musicians. I feel fortunate. Like guys come to me and they're actually interested in my opinion about
right.
how a guitar should be built. I mean, there are guys who've been playing guitar for 30 years, 40 years, maybe even longer, and they're interested to hear what I have to offer. And it's great. I mean, it just, helps you connect with musicians, it helps you connect with people in a really different way, which is something that I enjoy.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Now, I mean, you must have some interesting stories with other musicians while, with talking about guitars and other things. Um,
My guitar talks they're never ending. They're just, it's you can start and then there's no end. It depends on how much whiskey is lying next to us, and then that conversation could
and
be 2 minutes
right,
or 4 hours long. It's just non-stop.
right, right. Of course, of course. So the other thing that since you were talking about it as a business, uh,
Yeah.
how how is it a profitable trade? Like how do you see it? See, I'm not sure. So, like a musician, a,
Hmm.
number one is what are the kind of skills that you need to be a luthier? Number one, what are the see? It's not one thing. It's not just woodworking or it's not just
Yeah.
sound knowledge. It's like a bunch of things that put together to for you to become a luthier. So, what are the things that at least in a simplified manner, let's say, what are the things that you might need to become a luthier? Number one, and even if you do become a luthier, so let's say in a country like India. Uh,
Yeah.
do you think you have a good response in terms of we do have a lot of guitarists in our country, but a lot of
Yes.
them are still buying branded existing guitars in a shop. So even if you do go to a store and you want to buy a guitar, the
Hmm.
options of you getting to choose something out of the world is not there. You find you'll have to place a special order for you to get the guitar that you have seen on the internet or something like that. In such a
Right.
business scenario, how does it work for you? Like how is it profitable at all?
So to start off with, my market segment is not like I'm not in competition with any of the brands that sell in this country. Let me start with that,
Okay.
right? There are market segments, right? Like with any product,
Right.
you have various options at various price points, right? Because I'm a one-man shop, because of the materials that I work with, and because of the time that gets invested into each instrument, which is close to about 3 months per guitar, it is
Wow.
not physically possible for me to sell a guitar for 15, 20,000 rupees or
Right.
50,000 rupees, right?
Right.
It's just physically impossible. I
Right.
cannot do it because I'm not producing like Taylor. I'm not
It's not a
making
mass
800 guitars a day.
production. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
right? So Taylor does 800 a day, and this was a couple of years ago. Um,
Right.
and which is great for them but that's their business model, right?
Right.
So their margins are lower and their volume is high. I don't
Right.
work on volume. I make about 15 guitars a year. That's my cutoff. I don't really go more than that. If I'm really pushing myself, I may take it up to 20, but that's on a really hardcore year.
Right.
I
Right.
just don't have the time because if I
Right.
do, then I need to change a lot of my processes and do things in a way where I'm not necessarily comfortable about what the outcome could be.
Right. You might be
And if I
compromising on some detail
Yeah,
because,
in my
yeah.
mind. I mean, you may never
Right.
see it. I don't know. I've never tried it, so I don't know. But in my
Right.
mind, if
Right.
I'm not confident that I can give it 100% of what I think I should be giving,
Right.
um, that instrument will not go out, right?
Right.
And what that translates to for a client is that it becomes more expensive simply
Right.
because I don't make two guitars identical. I've never made two guitars
Right.
of exactly the same.
Right.
So I don't have guitars in stock that people walk in and buy. Each piece,
Okay.
like I was saying earlier, is made after several discussions with clients because I want it to work for you. If
Right.
it doesn't work for you, then I don't care how good a guitar it is.
Right. Of course.
Because I've just spent 3 months of my life making something beautiful which sounds lovely, but it's just not right for you. And
Right.
it's a lose-lose situation as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
You're not
Right.
happy, I'm not happy. So what's the point? Yeah. So as a result of that, direct competition is basically, I don't look at it as competition. I'm not. It would be great if stores in India started stocking really high-end stuff, but for
Right.
them, it's an investment as well. And it's difficult for them because a lot of the people coming in don't want to necessarily put down that kind of money on an instrument,
Right.
right? The ones who are ready to will they end up contacting me directly any which way.
Right.
Yeah. Would it help with the reaching out to musicians across the country to have presence in stores? Yes, absolutely. But that's again, as a business, it's much tougher to carry out in reality
Right.
because there's a lot of implications at many levels across the chain. Yeah. And that becomes a little bit more time consuming. And it's not just a function of, okay, if I reduce my price by 15,000, they will buy it. It's not as simple as that. There's multiple things that the store owners are looking at. They need to be sure that they've got a market locally which will be interested in the product, right?
Right.
And if they're unsure of it, they're never going to invest money. And I
Yeah.
don't do
Right.
consignment work. And I don't do consignments. I will not send you an instrument and say, please keep it for 6 months. And if it doesn't sell, give it back. Because it's going to come back with 100 scratches on it and I can't do anything with it then.
Right.
Right? So there's multiple things that play over here. So whenever people have an option, I'll say, come visit my workshop or let's get on a call. Let me walk you through what your options are and we'll see what we can do. Right. To answer the first part of your question, is it
I was just
profitable?
getting to that. Huh?
Yeah, I think the answer is it's no different from any other trade and any other category of work around the world. If you're determined enough, if you have a product that's solid, and if you put your heart into it and you're smart enough, these four things, I think.
Right.
If you've got those going for you, you'll make it work.
Right.
Right. There's just as many failed luthiers that I know of as there are failed engineers or, whatever. I mean, as an actual number, there's probably many more. Yeah, I mean, relatively, I'm saying because the industry of luthiers is so small compared to most of the others, right? But point being, the guys who've taken the time to invest in themselves and in their brand and in the quality of the product that they're putting out, invariably, they make it work, right? For me personally, I'm fortunate enough, I cannot complain. I've had a pretty good run. I've had more than a good run, and it continues, so touch wood. And there's a few more things planned out. So every couple of years, we're trying to find ways to come up with something that's maybe more accessible to the musicians. And I'm trying to think of ways to do that without importing $50 guitars from China and putting my brand on them, right? Because the whole point of doing this is to not be selling that.
Not do that, yeah.
Right? The idea is to have something that's of some serious quality and where guys can hopefully put it up against any guitar anywhere in the world and be like, it holds up, right? That's the dream. And hope, fingers crossed, the guys who have the guitars are happy with it, right? And yeah, man, I mean, so is profitability? Yes, there is. You can earn money. Is it tough? Yeah, you're going to get your ass kicked. I'm not going to, beat around the bush. You will get your ass kicked, and you have to be ready. You've got to be ready for it. It's not okay. I've opened my business today. I've made a Facebook page and an Instagram account, and I've got 2,000-3,000 subscribers. So where are my orders? Yeah, there are no orders. Right. You first focus on who you are. How are you going to? What are you selling to the client? Why is he or she going to buy a guitar from you at this price point? Whatever your price point may be. Right. There have to be certain questions that you need to be clear of. If you're not clear about these things, if I look at your face, and which a lot of people do actually, it'll be like, oh, you look like you've got some money. Hey man, my guitar started 5 lakhs. The guy next to you doesn't look, he looks like a slightly more broke musician. Hey man, my guitar started at 1 lakh. So those kind of things don't really make sense. They may help you in the short term if you think you're being smart, they'll help you earn a bit of money in the short term. It's not going to work out long term because it leads nowhere. You don't know what you're worth, basically. And you're trying to scam the other guy because you have no clarity in terms of what your instruments should be selling for. Right? And so it is a tough thing because I'm not making a guitar which is at a fixed market price. So I cannot put my guitar out there and be like, oh, there's a Fender model, a GA model which sells at so and so, so my guitar should be so much. I can't do
Right.
that.
No,
Right?
the
So I
reason
look
I
at the
asked
amount of,
you, huh,
yeah,
sorry, continue.
yeah. No, so I was just to close this bit, I was saying I just look at the amount of time and effort that goes into it, the materials that go into it, and that's how I come up with my cost, right?
Right,
There's a certain market value for the instruments that I make, and I try and stick with that.
right.
It's very straightforward. And I'll tell every client straight up, there's no hidden stuff, and this is what your instrument is going to cost. This is the amount of time it will take. It's roughly about a year right now. So from the time of ordering till the time of completion is about 12 months. And
Okay,
that's about it, man. Yeah.
right. No, the reason I asked you was, number one, there is, I just went through a recent stat about
Hmm.
luthiers in the country, and
Yeah.
I don't know if the word is right, successful, because if you have made an instrument, I think you're successful. But it said successful luthiers about 4 in the country.
In India,
It's,
this was a stat
yeah.
for India.
They
Okay.
start for India, and in the sense it's like in the sense that they're making guitars, continually making guitars and selling it,
Yeah.
right? So it said about 4 to 8 was the number, but the number is so low, and I'm just trying to get into an understanding of. So number one, I do understand the fact that it's not the most accessible thing to do,
Hmm.
so to speak. And the other thing is, I just wanted to get into your mind a little bit to understand how this whole luthiery thing functions. Like when you're making a guitar, what goes through your mind? Like what are you thinking? Which is what you answered basically. And I mean, I like the viewers who are listening to it, the listeners who are listening to it. I hope they get an in-depth understanding into what the business is all about and what it is. What does it feel to make something like this?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer your question about the stat, first of all, if I'm being brutally honest, I think they're being overly optimistic when they say 4 to 8. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Wow.
I think the number is lower
Wow.
than that for people who are continually making guitars.
Right.
And it's sad and it's unfortunate, but I'm pretty sure it's true. Okay.
Right.
That's about as much as I'm going to get into this part
Okay.
of it.
Okay. Okay.
Right. The other part of it is, in case I didn't make it abundantly clear. Okay. So I love what I do, and I'm just going to put this out in black and white. It is ridiculously difficult,
Right.
okay, to make this work.
Yes.
Let me
Right.
put
Right.
that out there if you want it in simple
No,
terms.
the numbers are very clear. Like
Yeah,
considering what you said, if it was easy, then everybody would do it.
also, right?
Right.
It's going to take time. See, the thing is, it's one of these skills which is like, it's like an old-time skill set, in the sense
Right.
that people have to be willing to do an apprenticeship or spend that time. It's like doing an MBA or some other college degree. You're going
Right.
to
Fair
take your
enough.
2 or 3 years to first study, right? Before
Right.
expecting to do something with it. And then after that,
Right.
you'll get a base level job and then a mid level job and then work your way up.
Right.
But with guitars, for whatever reason, whoever starts off guitars, they're like, oh, I saw the YouTube tutorials. I signed up for an online course. And hey, dude, I'm now ready I'm a pro. I'm like, you're not a pro. You are a guy who thinks who can make a guitar, which is fine. It's great. You should. And I encourage it. I will give you advice for free. There is no problem. I love it when people start making guitars. I think it's awesome. Right?
Right.
But don't confuse your desire to make a guitar for being a professional. By definition, a professional
Yeah.
is someone who does this for a living.
Living.
Like you
Of
said, your
course.
stat 4 to 8 people in the whole country of one
Right.
point how many ever billion, right?
Right.
So it is extremely challenging, more so because a lot of the parts, a lot of the things you need to put them together don't exist in India. So you have to import everything. And given our current situation, it's a nightmare importing anything into India right now.
Right.
Okay. That aside, can it be done? Of course, it can be done. But I mean, it's the same logic as can anything be done?
Right.
The question is the more important question is how driven are you?
Right. Fair
Right?
enough.
If you're willing to bend over backwards and slog your butt off for a while, by all means, it will happen. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't happen.
Right. Fair enough.
Right? But you have to be willing to do that, and not for 1 month or 6 weeks.
You have
You've got to be willing to do that for
stick to it
5 years
for a
straight.
while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give
Yeah.
it 5 years and then talk.
Right.
Right? Put your head down and work like a horse for a few years, and then let's have a chat about it. And
Right.
because that journey in itself will clarify a lot of things for you in your head, right? You will start thinking about things that you didn't even know you didn't know, right? Like with any subject, man. Well, the deeper you get into it, the more you understand that you know nothing.
Right.
And that's fine.
Of course.
And that's great because it keeps the doors open to just continually learn lifelong.
Yeah. And growth,
I think that's
of course.
brilliant. So even now, I mean, I've been doing this for several years now, but every year I still try and make one trip out, which is just to hang out with a luthier somewhere in the world whose work I like and who's a friend of mine, just to bounce off ideas in an informal setting. So we hang out for a week or 2 weeks and, we'll discuss philosophies of building. We'll discuss whatever other ideas are going on. And we'll just sit and do this casually. So we'll be sitting with a bunch of beers and just talk for a few days. Or I'll visit their workshop and they'll be like, oh, I've seen you working with these weird woods that are only available in India. So what's your experience like? And so I sit and, we have this exchange and it's amazing.
Right.
Because it helps me stay fresh. Like, I'm not ever content being like, oh, I've hit this level and this is where I'm going to be for the rest of my life. No, this is where I am this year.
Now, yes.
And and as far as skill goes, as far as knowledge goes, whatever it is, I mean, hopefully the idea is to keep it going.
The more you keep doing it, you'll keep growing and you have to just keep going at it.
Exactly, man.
And you were talking about like getting parts, to make the guitar. So one is also, the other thing is I wanted to talk to you about the wood that you were mentioning, using unconventional wood to make guitars. Now, what is your experience with it? In the sense that, of course, there is the canonical like wood that people use, like, for example, rosewood, fretboard, etc.
Sure.
Where did you get the idea of, or rather, how were you prompted into looking at different kinds of wood to make this guitar? Because I had seen, I think, through our mutual friend Raghuraman, I had seen a guitar that you made that was made out of tamarind wood.
Yes,
and
that's
I
right.
was surprised. So how did you realize like what the quality of this wood is like? What does it take to study these things? Like, how do you study this?
Well, to be honest, when I'm starting off, okay, if it's a wood that I've never worked with, I'm going to go purely on aesthetics initially.
Okay.
I'm not going to build an instrument out of it. I'm talking about when I'm at a timber mart and I see a plank of wood that looks interesting and I haven't seen it before or I haven't worked with it before. I'm just going to buy a slab that's 2 feet long and I'm going to keep it aside for a few months for it to dry out. Once it's dried out, I'll slice it into thinner pieces which are closer to what a guitar back or a guitar top would be. Okay. At that point, I will have a much better idea of a couple of things. One is, what kind of stiffness is this piece of wood giving me, right? I need it needs to have a certain stiffness to weight ratio for it to work for me, for an instrument. Yeah. So I check that. After that, I do a lot of I listen to the tap tones a lot, right? There's a lot of hype surrounding this.
Timbre of the
I just pick it up and I tap it. I mean, there are certain parts of the piece which I listen to, and I'm not listening for a specific note or anything. There's no science behind this. Right. I'm listening for it in terms of I'm trying to understand whether it wants to sing, whether it wants to ring out like a bell, whether it wants to resonate from the get-go. Right. Woods that want to do that, in my experience, tend to make guitars that are more efficient or for better sounding, whatever that may mean, right? They just want to make music. There are some woods that just want to. There are some, it's not that the others can't be used. You can use them, but they have to be treated differently.
Okay.
Right? It's like saying, let me put it this way. It's like saying, I want to make a chocolate cake, but I've run out of butter, so what do I use as a substitute?
Right.
It's not that you cannot use other things, and it's not that they will not be tasty if used.
Right.
The challenge lies in figuring out, if I use a substitute, what am I going to do differently in order to make it sound good?
Right. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
I'm not going to try and make that piece of tamarind sound like rosewood, because it's not rosewood. This is the biggest problem that a lot of, that I have with a lot of conversations that I have with potential clients, where they're like, is this like rosewood? Is this like rosewood? I'm like, no, rosewood is like rosewood.
Like the wood. Right.
And if you want
Amazing.
rosewood, then use rosewood. There's nothing wrong with it. Use it. It's a great wood. I
Right.
just try and offer different options because rosewood is on several endangered species lists, and it's just
Right.
one of those things where there are so many superb sounding guitars that exist in this world which are not made with rosewood,
Rosewood. Right.
right? And it's not because I don't like the wood. I love it. I love rosewood, man. I'm just trying to offer someone an option that's a little bit more
Right.
viable. That's all. And I enjoy working with stuff that's unconventional. And I get where they're coming from because when you haven't experienced something like tamarind, like if someone had told you, will you buy a tamarind guitar? You'd say no.
If I
But once
haven't
you
used
played
it,
the
yeah,
instrument,
definitely.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? But now that you've played the guitar and I ask you, man, would you consider tamarind for a guitar? Chances are your answer may be different,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Certainly.
And
Yeah.
so that's exactly what happened. Like when I first took that guitar that you're talking about and I showed it to the owner, right? He had no clue what it was. And so I just said, I made this for myself. Would you like to try it out? And he said, sure. And he tried it out and he's like, this is the one. I'd taken 4 or 5 guitars to show him. He's like, I'm buying this right now. Right now. And I said, dude, this one's actually not for sale. I'll make you one more exactly like it. And he said,
Right.
nope, I'm buying this right here. Right. And that's how the guitar landed up with him. So, and then after that is when the conversation started. He said, what is this? I've never seen wood like this. And I said, oh, that's tamarind. And he just started laughing because he said, I can't believe it. I didn't know guitars can be made out of tamarind.
Right.
And my answer to that, usually, it's a very standard answer that I give people. I'm like, if Ovation is selling guitars made with a composite plastic body, then why would a tamarind wood or a mango wood or a jackfruit wood not be able to give you some superb tone if you're coming from rosewood and you're willing to come to plastic? Come on, man. I mean,
Yeah.
there's like 400 species of tropical woods in India, right?
Right. Right.
So there's plenty of stuff
Right.
that can be used. And rosewood is one great example, and that's simply because that's what's been going to the West all these years. It's being exported there.
Right.
And therefore, every guitarist knows of it because
Right.
Martin, Gibson, Taylor, Fender, whatever, you name a company and they use it, right? It's a
Right.
standard.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a great tone wood. But there are so many species available which are
Right.
also perfectly suitable. Yeah.
Right.
One needs to be a little bit open. And I think as luthiers, part of what our responsibility is to help educate them in terms of what the pros and cons of each species is, right?
Right.
Me simply telling everyone that, hey, this sounds like rosewood, this also sounds like rosewood, that also sounds like rosewood is a losing battle.
Right.
Because when they get the
Right.
guitar, it is not going to sound like rosewood. And then, it's my butt on the line.
Right.
Yeah. So
Right.
just stuff like that. But it's a fun process, man. Experimenting with woods. I have not used a non-traditional species of wood that I have not enjoyed working with, or that I would say that I will never
Wow.
use again.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
Right? I honestly haven't,
Fantastic.
and I'd say this is complete honesty. And it is about
Right.
6 or 7 different local species I've worked with, and it's been absolutely
Okay.
all right. Yeah.
Right.
So
So do you like how do you, again, the question goes back to it at some point. I mean, I'm sure not all of it is available right where you are. I'm sure you'll have to travel quite a bit to search for this, something that you have in mind. Let's say I want to make, so let's say you decide you've probably had some experience with a different kind of wood in some other way, and you say, okay, you know what, why can't I try that? But it's probably not available around you. And number one is the travel that is involved in searching for the wood. And
yeah.
and the other thing is, so let's say you do get it. Like, what are the difficulties even in getting wood? Like, how much of it is like? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where there are pieces of wood that you need to make this, and you're in like you said, the endangered species list?
Mm-hmm.
Do you find difficulties with forest officers? I don't know how this works, so I'm just trying to
I don't deal with
understand.
forest officers, so I deal with suppliers. So there are guys who do the logging themselves. I mean, not the logging, but the forest officers will supervise the logging, and then they hold auctions for logs of wood.
Right.
All right. Sorry, someone keeps saying look behind. I don't know whether that's for you or for me, but there's something on the wall behind you
I don't
or
see
me.
it.
I don't have a wall behind me. Okay,
There's nothing here.
look behind.
Cool.
All right, great.
Job done.
Christopher, Adam, we have looked
Christopher,
behind.
job done.
Unfortunately,
Uh,
coming back to this, sorry.
yeah.
So the forest officials typically get the logs auctioned, right?
Right.
Or they supervise. It's a government auction that takes place, and private companies who deal with supplying toned wood to various companies around the world, they go
Right.
and they place a bid, and then they buy.
Okay.
And these are in massive quantities. So you're talking like
Okay.
4 or 5 or 6 rosewood logs or mahogany logs or whatever it
Right.
is that's being
Right.
auctioned. And that's enough material for, several hundred guitars. So
Right.
what they do is then they dry it off, they'll cut it into planks and then cut that into back and sides and dry it some more.
Okay.
And then a long time later, once it's ready, at that point, then they'll reach out to guys like me or to the companies and say, all right, stock has come in, how many do you need? Right? The bulk of it goes to the big factories, whether it's in Europe or China or America, wherever.
Right.
So the bulk of it goes there. For the luthiers, they keep usually a different grade of back and side sets or tops, which are they generally much higher grade than what go to the factories. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the kind of stuff that we're looking for is literally, in an ideal situation, it's the best of the best.
Right.
It's not something that is chalega. It is, okay, I don't want chalega. If show me the best that you have and I will select from there. And so they keep those sets aside, and those are, again, comparatively, they are exorbitantly priced, obviously, because they're not selling 10,000 of them. They're selling like 15 or 20 or whatever it is.
Limited. Yeah.
Absolutely. So my interaction is with those suppliers.
Okay.
So they do all the paperwork with the forestry guys. They get all the permits for the logs. That's their responsibility. And they do all of that. I mean, there are enough guys who don't do that as well, but at least the guys who have been dealing with, they're old players in the business. They've been around for 40, 50 years, and they supply to the big factories. So at that point, you don't have an option of not getting your stuff in order.
Right.
So they're good guys to work with. And now, at least with me, it's very quick. Now they've reached a point where they know if something is not up to what my particular standard is, it'll come back to them the next day. So I'll call them and ask for photographs first. I'll promptly get, photos of whatever's on offer. I choose my sets from there, and then they ship it out. But earlier on, yes, I did travel around quite a bit looking for cool species of wood here, there, and everywhere, up to the northeast, to North India, South India. Then a lot of roaming around and talking to people in all kinds of places who probably thought I was psychotic, because I'd be like, do you have wood which has nice figure in it, beautiful wood? There were some interesting conversations that happened.
Right. So somebody is asking you a question. Is your toned wood all quarter sawn? Are the mills skilled with quarter sawing log?
Hi, Tim. The stuff that I use is quarter sawn. Are they skilled with quarter sawing? No, they're not. They're not used to it because logs typically get sawn for furniture. And when you're cutting out slabs for furniture, the direction of the grain doesn't really matter at that point. They're just slicing it in the fastest way possible. So whenever I do come across a small log that I want to resaw, I will take it to the mill, and I end up paying the guys extra to cut it the way I want them to cut it. And they will cry and crib about it, but they do it. So it's a bit of a process, but they do it. So it's all good. Yeah. Right. They don't know what quarter sawn is. For anyone listening in, that is a technical question. It's just to make sure that the grain lines of the wood are going straight. So when you see a rosewood back which has straight lines running through it, that's quarter sawn. When wood is quarter sawn, it is the stiffest. It is the strongest because the full grain is there along its length. If I was to, so if this was a piece of wood and the wood grain was like that, that's quarter sawn. And if the grain at the end of the plank was vertical, that's quarter sawn. If this grain was flat, by the time I thin this down to 2 millimeters, which is my back, it's going to become like a potato chip. It's going to warp, it's going to change its shape, and it's also going to become much easier to break and crack, right? So although it may give me a more interesting figure to look at, it's going to be structurally a lot more challenging to work with. So we try and avoid that as much as possible.
Okay. Okay. So we are nearing the
Yeah.
end of our conversation. But before you go, I think a lot of us would like to know, including me
Yeah.
and the people who are watching. So before getting into professional instrument building, I
Yeah.
think I asked you this a little before also. What do you think are the basic skills that you might want to actually hone yourself with before you even think about something like this?
Okay. Um, I think you should do a couple of things if you're considering becoming a luthier. The first thing is have fun with the basics of woodworking, right? There's enough basic tutorials online now which are of very good quality to teach you how to use hand tools. You don't need to be using specialized power tools, but just the basics of how to use a chisel, plane, saw. How do I plane a piece of wood? How do I saw something down to an actual line? You know, if I draw a line, how do I draw a straight line? Let me start with that.
Right.
How do I dimension a basic piece of wood? Which means if this needs to be 10 centimeters by 5 centimeters, how do I make sure that's actually 10 by 5 and not 10.3 by 5 point something? That's a
Right.
great start. However, when you're making a guitar and you say 10 by 5, it needs to be 10 by 5. You don't have the luxury of going 2 millimeters off one way or the other because it's not going to be a guitar by the end of it.
Right.
And I say this simply because building an instrument it's a lot of little things that go together. There's a lot of small steps, and you need to do each one of them right in order for that end result to be magical. And
Right.
initially, of course, you won't, and that's fine. But that's the aim. You want to get to that point, right? So the basics of woodworking, number one, once you've ideally done a little bit of woodworking, and it doesn't matter what you're making. You could be making a table, a chair, a box, it
Right.
doesn't matter. Just any project, yeah, have fun with it.
Right.
Enjoy the process. And once you've done that, I would strongly suggest build a guitar, like do a course, something like what I offer, or what Audi D'Souza, who's in Bombay, he does that as well. Um, Spend some time, like spend 2 or 3 weeks, build a guitar, right?
Right.
Build one and build it under supervision so that you actually understand what's going on and why it's happening, right? And there will be plenty of goof ups, and which is fine, and they should be. And you learn how to work with them, learn why it happened, and learn ways to make sure that doesn't happen again, right?
Right.
From there on, if you still have a desire to build guitars, because a lot of people don't by the time they've finished doing one course and they realize just how much sanding goes into one instrument. And they're like, I had no clue you had to stand this much. That's
Right.
60% or 70% of the work.
Right.
But you have to do it. There's no escaping it. And if after that you still want to do it, then look for someone to apprentice with. Or if you want to go down the Luthier school path, you can do that. If you want to wing it and think you can run a business with just having built one, that's also fine. I mean, there's no right or wrong answers. There's just some
Right.
parts which
Right.
are going to be easier and some parts which are not.
Right.
And I think personally, I would put it in this order that apprentice, number one. I would, if I could go back and start off all over again, I would. I started this off a bit late in my life in the sense that I was married, I had, a kid, so I couldn't really disappear for a year or two. But if I could, I would go and do that for 2 years with a really good luthier and
Right.
just be his workhorse. I would, whatever work was needed from cleaning the workshop to building guitars, I don't care. Do it. It teaches you a lot about not just instrument making, but how to run a shop, how to run a
Right.
business, how to interact with clients, how to make your presence felt in the online world nowadays. All of that. And all of those things are important. It's not just the product. Your product is
Yeah. Yeah.
literally one tiny part of it. So
Right.
be
The
aware of
discipline that
that when
comes
you're
with it.
stepping in.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you get into it, be aware of that part. Like, don't romanticize just the building bit of it, because as fun as it is, that's just one part of it. That's all.
Right.
Far too many, and I'm saying this again and again, I know it, but I get about 6 emails a week from youngsters who want to start off building guitars, and they're like, I will come and work for you. And I'm like, thank you, but I'm not hiring anyone. It's very kind of you to offer. However, I would suggest like, what's your background? Have you done anything? Have you ever held a saw? No,
Right.
you know. I'm like, so do that. I mean, learn to walk a little bit before getting into the Olympics. You're
Right.
looking at, or friends will email me questions about so and so voices his guitar this way. You voice your guitar like this, and I'm like, man, understand again. Just how do I bend a set of sides? How do I glue a
Right.
top to a back? Figure all that. By the time you've done that 20 times, you'll understand what's happening with the voicing.
Right.
Right? Again, it's a question of trying to fly before you can walk. It's start at the basics, start at the ground level, and there's nothing wrong with that. Take your time over here because you're
Right.
only going to build a more solid foundation. And then
Right.
by the time you've done 20, 30 guitars, whatever it is, you will have your own ideas. You won't need mine.
Right. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't need to have mine. My guitars already exist. You need to build your guitars. So I can help you. I'm more than happy to help you, but get to that place where I can actually make a difference to what you're doing rather than teaching you how to cut a piece of wood, because you can learn that elsewhere,
Elsewhere.
right?
Right.
So that's all. But yeah, I mean, learn, put in the effort, man, and you can do it. It's not rocket science. As my mentor says, we're not trying to cure cancer. We're building guitars. So don't take it too seriously. It's fun, and just go for it.
Amazing. This conversation can go on for a while if we let it, but for the sake of everybody involved, I think it's time to come to a short.
Yeah,
But
sure.
I really do hope we can have you on our playlist chat again, and we can probably talk a lot more about this. And it's been
Sure.
such a great conversation so far. At least
Sure,
I'm
man.
not sure about all our listeners and viewers, but from a personal end, I think I learned a lot today about a field that I barely knew anything about.
Yeah.
So that was great, and
So,
thank you so much. Yeah, tell me.
sorry, just the last one. Do you want to take any of
Yeah.
the questions before we
Oh
sign off? I
yes.
think there's a couple of questions that have come in.
There was one question. It said, was there any wood that you worked with that turned out to be a total fail?
No, actually, I haven't. I don't know whether I've just been really, really lucky or something else, but I honestly have not come across something that I have had to burn and be like, I am not going to work with this. I just haven't. I mean, yes, in my own mind, I have a ranking in terms of what I would prefer to work with over something else,
Right.
but I haven't worked with something that I would put out that I would not be okay to sell. Even the experimental stuff that I've worked with.
Right.
I've been really, really happy with the outcome.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, there's no more
So
for me
there's
to
been
say.
nice. That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and another question is, what are your thoughts about becoming a luthier in retirement? So do you think is
In
it too
retirement.
late? Is that too late in life to produce good work? Okay.
Hey, I think that's a rhetorical question. You should know the answer to that. This
Right.
is not something that needs my input. Um, you can produce good work at any point, man. I mean, the best luthiers in the world, from violin makers on, have been building stuff into their 80s and 90s. So simply being retired is not an excuse or for old age. I
Right.
think it's more a question of what is it you want to do? Do you want to start a business at this point, or do you just want to make guitars? Because, for example, a lot of my friends in the US, they are hobbyist builders. They are all, my friends are mostly above 60. So let me start with that.
Right.
A lot of these guys have already retired and they build guitars for fun. They'll build one for their grandkids, they build one for a friend. If they want to earn a bit of money, they'll ask someone to cover the cost of materials.
Right.
Whatever thing works. It's a hobbyist, but you can still pay them. But the idea is they're not under pressure to try and make this a business for sustenance because they spend their lives doing that and they've got
Right.
their retirement in place. Now it's just a question of, can I do something that's fun for me? Can I do something that keeps me engaged, keeps me working with my hands? And if I earn a little bit of money with it, why not?
Right.
Right? So
Of
look at it
course.
from that
Of course.
perspective, right? The only thing I will say is anytime you're looking at selling, just be very aware of what you're selling in terms of quality, right? Because the minute you start selling something, people will compare it to a market product that exists. So even though you may feel it's a great achievement for you to have made this guitar, keep in mind that even a 2,000 rupee guitar that comes out of China comes with an impeccable finish on it without a single scratch.
Right. Right.
So just keep that in mind. That's just something to think about. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I think we have answered all our questions. Let me just take a
What is
look at
this?
this.
John Woo. Yes, John, absolutely, man. Whenever you're in Goa next, you are mine. There is no holidaying, there is no partying. You are going to be tied up in the workshop and made to sand. He's a friend of mine from Malaysia who's building guitars over there, and
Okay.
he visited me in Delhi last year. And the poor chap, he came on a 5-day holiday, and the first day I was like, get into the workshop and start sanding. So it's I think I've scarred him for life.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us and sharing this experience also. Also, there's one question. One second. Oh
Yeah.
no.
One more.
Someone wants to know what whiskey you're having. That's
It's from Goa. It's called Woodburns.
there you go.
Superb
There you
stuff.
go.
Highly recommended. Highly recommended. They won't make me a brand ambassador, but I highly recommend it.
There you go. There you go. All right. So that is a
Yeah.
really interesting chat, and I really hope we could have you over at our academy at some point, and
Absolutely,
maybe we
man. I
could
look
do
forward
this
to it.
again as well. Yeah, it's been a pleasure having you on board, and this playlist is going to be fun. Also, for people who joined us later, check the playlist out. Go to the link in our bio on our Instagram channel and click on the link, and the playlist is right there. So check it and have a great weekend, all of you. And we'll see you guys soon, real soon.
Yeah. Thank you
All
for
right?
having me over, man. I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you. Very
Yeah,
refreshing
yeah. Me
interview.
too. Me too.
Very
Me too.
different from my usual ones. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
enjoy the
Thank you.
music, all of you. I hope you like the playlist. If you don't, please beat him up. I have nothing to do with this. If you like it, please send me messages. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
There you go. So you know what to do now. All right. Okay. So see you,
All right.
Karan, and thank you again.
Cheers,
Bye bye.
man. Cheers.